Welcome to Fresh Tech Tips. I am Derrell Noris, CEO of Fresh Tech Solutions. Have a couple of my business partners here with me today.
Hello guys, I'm Nicholas Mbaezue-Daniel, founder of Aegis Project Management.
And I'm Dr. Doug Franklin, co-founder and CEO of Deck Launch LLC. How are you guys doing today?
Blessed.
Good, man. I'm good. Ready for
so
another
today's,
week, man.
right, let's get it, man. So today's Fresh Tech Tip topic is stretching your services. So Nick, let's hit us with one of those world famous, beautiful definition of yours on expanding services.
Yeah, so expanding services or stretching services like we're talking about today refers to increasing your products or your service offering based on the demand of the market. 42% of businesses that failed based per the SBA did so because they failed to meet the demands of the marketplace, what they were asking of them. So eventually you're not giving people what they want, they stop messing with you, and businesses cannot survive.
No, definitely. So I kind of wanted to go over a couple of topics today when we're talking about expanding these services. So I wanted to go over, when is the time right to expand your services? Are you ready to expand? And now that you've expanded, my favorite thing, now what?
So underrated, Doc, that last point.
So Doc, let's get into this this first point. When is the right time to stretch your services? And what do we really mean by stretching those services?
So when we talk about when is the right time to stretch yourself, we're talking about when you actually have the capability to add additional services to your selection set of things. So like we talked a little bit about pivoting in the past, when we're talking about making a complete change. But when we talk about expanding services, we're talking about adding an additional product line to your business. And so I believe when we talked about pivoting and talking about how some of the businesses went the way of the dinosaur, a really good example is that Blockbuster Video that should have expanded their services at the same time they were pivoting. They could have done everything, they didn't, and they died. So let's kind of break down some of those things that were there. So the first piece is when your core services are standardized. So if you're good at something, one of the great things that you should be doing with your business is making sure that you have the processes aligned to make something as efficient as possible. So one of the things that Nick always tells us is, show me the processes for this product, Doug. Or if we're working with these businesses, where's the workflow? And it forces us to go back, look at what we're doing, and actually put everything together step by step. So what happens when you're standardized? It means that you have, everything that you have going on for this one specific product or service, how much time it takes. And when it's standardized, you are so good at it that it's almost like breathing. You don't think about it, but you have everything there and ready to go.
I love that.
I'm sorry.
I love it because it's crazy because how important core services, to have those standardized, it gives you the leeway in the room and the time to think about those other services. Because if you're still in the business and you're still in those processes and you're still working out, trying to make it work, you have to master one thing before you move on to the other. So you have to make sure that your bread and butter is toasty.
Yes, exactly what I was gonna say. It's crazy how I guess great minds think alike. But if you haven't standardized what you already do, then you're not gonna see those opportunities, not only to identify where you can stretch or where you can't stretch, but also to figure out how it fits in, which we're gonna lead into now, because stretching your services is one thing, but being able to keep doing it or making it sustainable is another thing. And that goes back to that core foundation like Derrell and Doug just mentioned.
Yes, and so the next one I want to kind of touch on is something from that I have a lot of personal experience with, is when you identify new needs from your customer base. So, man, working in the technology sector, it's everybody thinks that you can do everything. I get people calling me, hey, can you fix my Facebook page? Can you create this virtual reality system? The range is outrageous. So the possibilities
Right.
for expansion for a tech company is ridiculous. But how we kind of maintain that and manage that and pick which services we're going to expand upon is based on our feedback from our customers. So if I already have a client who's already an app client, and I'm looking at their social media and it's trash, I'm like, hey, we might be able to do something with that. And especially if I see a couple of my app clients with trash social media, then I'm like, okay, this is a need. So that's what we're talking about when you're identifying needs that are similar in the same space, but you can still kind of work with it and it still makes sense. And we're going to be talking about stuff that makes sense a little later, I'm sure.
Yes, and
that's a. Go ahead.
I was gonna say that just like Derrell was just saying, you have to you crawl first, or I mean you stand and then you crawl, and then you walk and then you run and then you jump. You can't just hop all the way to the last thing. So identifying those opportunities from the circle around you, saying, okay, they need this, like he mentioned, where it aligns, and then being able to do that is going to be a lot easier and a lot more sustainable than you trying to hop in to, okay, I started a tech company today and tomorrow I want to own the largest data center. It's probably not, a nice congruent jump, rather than doing something that your clients are actually needing and they're showing you based on what's going on around you.
And it goes back to something that we really like to talk about, is that it's cool when you have an idea and your idea is your own, but your ideas for how you run your business should be based on what the customer actually needs. So you might see something that's nice and glittery, it looks brand new, but what happens if it's something that your customer does not need at all? It could be a closely related business. It could take you little to nothing, but what's the worth of putting resources into something that your customers aren't even going to buy? So you have to really pay attention to those things and really make sure that you're looking on the outside to what your customers and what the market is telling you should do.
Yes, the market is so important. You have to follow the market. The market is important, man. It's fact versus fiction. So the next thing I want to talk about is, when another opportunity that you might think the right time is to expand your businesses or your business offerings, are when your current product line becomes stagnant. So when, let's say I'm just throwing an example out there, but I'm going to say SEO. Let's say we have an SEO company. And SEO is still alive and popping right now. Let's say 10 years later, it might not be. When it is declining because of all the social media and things. But if you have a company who focuses on search engine optimization and nobody's requiring that service, you have to expand or you're gonna die. You have to grow or die. And that's what this whole episode is about. We don't want our businesses that we're associated and our listeners to die because of being stagnant. So let's talk about some of those situations where you might need to create more services because you're stagnant.
All right, so I think the best way for us to go is to start to really look at kind of like the checklist for are you ready to expand, right? And so the first thing is, well, how far should you stretch your capabilities? So we have a running joke with Derrell that if he could start a business, any business that he could put a Z at the end, he would do it. So we would have like fresh burgers.
Watch out if your business has an S in it, because somebody's coming and they can turn that S to a Z.
he might add it to things that don't need a Z, like fresh coffees. But that's way out of our. That's way out of our weight. It's way out of our weight class. We're a tech company. we work with businesses, we consult with businesses, we build apps. There's absolutely no reason why we should be in food service full time. It's not really.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that, Doug. I love that you mentioned that, because y'all know my mind is kind of out there sometimes with the ideas, but when you identify an opportunity, just make sure it doesn't move too far away from your core business. So a running joke, everybody knows I love Torchy's Tacos, and I love tacos. And I mean, as much as I love tacos, it wouldn't make sense for me to start a department under Fresh Tech Solutions called Fresh Tacos, with the Z, of course. As much as I would love to do that, and as much as I would kill the taco game, you have to start thinking, do you have the right people for this? Do you have the expertise for this? Do you have the time for this? Do you have the team for this? So when we're talking about stretching services, don't think like me all the time. Be a little bit more like Nickish, and try to make it something that makes sense.
Yeah, and a lot of times, like over the past year, I mean, when either with Fresh Tech or Deck Launching, when we start talking about, okay, this is where we are, and usually what prompts these conversations, I mean, normally this is what we do, so we're always bouncing off ideas, especially when you have Derrell. We're always bouncing off ideas, but when we look at our business, it usually comes from the marketplace. Either there's a piece of the market that we're not reaching, either it's because of maybe price point or something that we don't offer, or we just feel from our standpoint that we may not be meeting on track for some goals. So either way, those two things, okay, what do we need to do different? And that's when you start to look at what you have and how you can stretch it out to meet those other, and those are projects that I love to work on, and the things that he's talking about. That's when you immediately go into, okay, how does this align? Because I keep mentioning alignment. How does this align with what we're doing? Because that's immediately going to inform how you're going to move your resources over. Because if you're doing something that doesn't align, that means you have to stretch a whole new segment of resources, because this thing doesn't go with what you're doing already. But if you do something that connects, then you can do a trickle down, a waterfall kind of effect to move your resources, whether it's money, time, personnel. So since they're working on this, they're also kind of working on what is new as well. And that way you don't waste, you don't have any resources wasted, because resources are limited.
No, Nick, I love that, Nick, because it's a thin line between stretching and starting something completely new. So you have to know what that line is, and be careful not to cross over it. I mean, it's okay to start new ventures, but if you're talking about your core business and you're talking about expanding off of those services, that's what this conversation is about today.
And my favorite part of looking at anything when we talk about our businesses, whether they be brand new, pivoting, or expanding, are the people. And so the big thing is, you could have a great idea, but do you have the human capital or the people that have the skills and abilities along with you to make this thing happen? A cool example is that we recently told you we're working with a Black esports network that started from doing events. And one of the biggest things that we had to do, not only to make the investor happy, but to make sure that they receive enough support, is to make sure that they at least had the executives in place. And the cool thing, and shout out to Tim and BDSN, is that as he starts to expand, even just from show to show, as he started to grow and kick things off, he's realized, hey, I can't kick the next show off until I have these specific things in place. And so those are the things that you have to ask yourself while you're moving forward. Do I have enough people to do this? Do I have the processes that we talked about when the right time is to make it happen? And of course, that all comes down to that money. Do you have that money?
Yeah, man. And I love that you said that, because it made me think about a whole another thing about expansion and stretching. And that's on the deck launch side. So we always get a lot of clients come in with these awesome ideas. And one of our main goals and one of our main jobs is to stretch that idea, is to stretch that money, to find out other ways to monetize this idea. So we're always thinking about stretching stretching services and expanding ideas. So it's like a second nature to us. So we just want y'all to start thinking about these kind of things. How can I increase this monetization from something that I'm already doing? How can I get more revenue in? How can I offer more services? What do they want? What makes sense? So that's kind of what we want to get across in this episode. And y'all all know how
something just hit me. Something just hit me, and I don't want to get us too much off track. I just realized that, so for some people who are listening to this, and right now they don't have a business yet, or they just have an idea. So expanding your service could also be you. So talking to my solopreneurs out there, the way you go from that jump of just being someone who doesn't have a business to someone who is a solopreneur or self-employed on the way to having a business that will be expanding to other services is expanding yourself first. So seeing what it is that you have, what skills that you have, and seeing how you can expand. You still have similar I want to call it similar factors. The time, the resources that you have, what skills do I have? The same way that when you're at a certain point in business and you want to expand to other markets, it's all the same thing. So don't think that because you don't have a business yet that this doesn't apply to you. The way that you go from being a professional to having your own business is first expanding those skills that you have. That's kind of how Aegis was born anyway. So it just kind of hit me while I was thinking about that, thinking about, hey, this is something I'm already doing, and this is something that people seem to want. Then how do I just take those skills that I have and make it to where I can offer it to people? And then that alignment, as you can see, it didn't stray too far from what we were already doing anyway. So it's a perfect example of what people, any solopreneur who's out there, or soon to be solopreneur who's out there who wants to think about how they can get into business, look within yourself first, and then look at the market and then make that connection.
Yeah. And I love when Nick gets light bulbs, because it kind of just trickle effect. When he started thinking, it just keeps going, because right off of that, we're talking about expanding services. I wish I would have had that mindset before I started my business, so I wouldn't have to be expanding services right now. That would have already been locked into the original processes and procedures. So if you're thinking about starting a business and you're thinking this one thing, think ahead and start thinking about those stretches that you can make prior to starting your business. Because if I would have done that, the expansion level would have been on a whole other level, because we would have been talking about expanding other stuff, because this would have been all in the process already.
Right.
It's kind of funny, because this conversation leads us back to the Nick episode that I like to call, when we talked about managing risk. And so for those people that are starting brand new businesses out here, and you've been doing this from time to time with your friends, because that's generally how a lot of ideas do come into genesis. You're helping your friends, utilizing your knowledge, skills, and abilities, and you decide to make it happen. Just think about some of those things that could possibly be risk factors that could affect you. Is it the time? Is it the money? Is it the having the team or the lack thereof? Is it just making sure that you schedule your time right? There's a bunch of things that you could think of that would allow you to expand much quicker than you know it. And I think this is a pretty good segue to talk about Rel's favorite thing, now what?
Now what? So you made these changes. You've taken our advice. You have listened to Fresh Tech Tips, and you have expanded your services. Now what? So we have to measure success. With everything we do, we have to measure success. So once you've expanded those services, the first thing we have to do is measure that success. What are we doing? Is this making sense? Did it make sense for me to expand these services? Is this costing me money? Am I making money? These are the questions that we need to be thinking about after we implement those expanded changes. And for us, this is very important, because like you said, we have a lot of services and a lot of ideas firing off all the time. So if we just throwing these ideas out and we're not checking to see if they're working, what are we doing?
I want to throw out a couple of words, and then I want Doug to just kind of knock it out of the park. So a couple of things. One thing is prioritization of resources. And then the other thing is, Rel said success, but I know he's just such a positive thinker. That's weird. But I would say track also your failures, because when you're tracking your failures, They don't have to go longer than they need to. As soon as it fails, you see what happened. Can I fix it? Oh, I need to abandon that, move away. So prioritization of resources, that's the biggest reason why you need to track your success.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you said that, Nick, because there's a bunch of things that could come across as like complete false positives when you expand your services. And so like you could be making more money when you expand your services, but at what cost? Does that mean that you're making more margin for per customer? Does that actually mean that you're spending less time, more time, double the time? So I mean, if something costs you double the time, it needs to at least give you double the profit, right?
Triple
so those are some of the things.
Profit.
The more the merrier. The more the merrier. Right. That's one of those things that we sit that, yeah. So go ahead, Ralph.
No, and that's perfect segue into how does this affect your day-to-day operations? Like if I were to start Fresh Tacos, I might have to be in the kitchen instead of making apps. So how does this affect your day-to-day operations, and does it make sense? So these are things that you have to think about before and after that you stretch those services. And this, and I love this. Y'all, I love this episode title, The Stretching Your Services. This episode 23. It's a Jordan episode. Next episode, we got to come on with it because it's 24 and we know what that means. So,
Kobe time.
And speaking of our
this will be. Yeah, this is going to be an exciting one, man.
All right, speaking of our next episode, and I think it's a perfect transition from expanding your services. And now what? We're going to talk about expanding your team. Now that you have those expanded services, you're going to need some day-to-day changes in your operation to run those things. So
specifically hiring, how to go about that, right?
Yeah, we're gonna deep dive in the hiring process and when it makes sense, how to do it. We got Dr. Doug, who's a freaking expert at it. So we're excited about it, y'all. We're gonna go ahead and close out this episode. Please think about stretching your services. Think about expanding those services. Find out when the time is right and are you ready. And then once you expand, think about now what. We'll see y'all next Monday at 12 p.m. on Facebook Live. Please join the Fresh Tech Tips Facebook group, and we'll talk to y'all soon. Thanks for joining Fresh Tech Tips.